Hey, what the heck? What the heck? And where do you think you're going? Matiriso, you can't be the one saying Ishapile, where else you were black sent by my previous exam. Matiriso, go at the back, take that seat and come and sit at the front. Why? Because of today we'll be learning about the drainage system in South Africa. What is a drainage system? In a simple definition, we will say it is a process whereby water leaves our land. Yes, a process whereby water leaves our land. In order for that process to be possible, we need a drainage basin. All right, what is a drainage basin? A drainage basin, it is an area drained by the main river and its tributaries. All right, let's write down the definition. I said it is an area drained, right? Area by the main river and its tributaries. Alright, how do you actually recognize the structure of a drainage basin? When you are looking at the picture, how do you see that this is a drainage basin? Alright, a drainage basin, it is like a toilet basin shape. Yes, a toilet basin shape, or we could say a bowl-like shape. So when you see a bowl-like shape area, you must think of a drainage basin. Alright, so if we have a bowl-like area, that will obviously mean this bowl-like area or the basin, toilet basin-like area have to have a system in which it will use to drain the water coming from precipitation. Remember, it is like a basin-like shape, so if it receives precipitation, it has to have a system in which it can transport the water out of that basin or out of that area. All right, and that system, it is called the river system. All right, before I move into a lot of terminologies, let's draw the structure of a drainage basin. All right, firstly we said it is an area, right? So this is our area, and this area, remember, how is it? It's like a basin, like a bowl-like shape, meaning the sides of this area has to be high-lying areas, meaning like if it's like this, right guys, if it's like a bowl-like shape or a basin-like shape, meaning the areas here are obviously what? They are high-lying areas, right? High-lying areas, low-lying areas, where there is obviously the river. Okay, let's not go there. So what did I say? I said this is called a high-lying area. And what is it called on a drainage basin? A watershed. So what is a watershed? A watershed divides the drainage basins. Right. So what else do we know? We know that this area consists, or it is drained by the main river. Meaning this area consists of a main river, right? And its tributaries, meaning the small streams that are joining the main river, are called tributaries. So this is what we call our tributaries, right? Let's write down. This is what we call our main river, and this is what we call our tributaries. All right, now we have 3 marks, guys. We have what we call our watershed, which is the high-lying area which separates the 2 drainage basins, meaning there could be another drainage basin separated by this high-lying area. This high-lying area. All right, and what else do we also have to know? We also have to know that the land in which the precipitation it is hitting, or in which the precipitation it is blossoming, we know that this area, it is called our catchment area. It catches the water coming from the precipitation. This is called our catchment. All right, this is our catchment. Okay, and what else do we also find? We find what we call a point where the tributaries meet the main river. So this is that point. So this area, it is called the what? Confluence, right? So this is the confluence. It is where 2 streams, or we could say a stream, mix or joins with the main river. Or you could have 2 streams joining each other, or two tributaries joining each other, that area will still be called a confluence. Alright, so as we are moving now, we actually see the drainage basin, right? So we do not end there. We know that there is obviously what we call the starting point, where this water it is coming from, the high-lying area, where this water is coming from, the high-lying area, and this is the low-lying area. A river obviously moves from a high-lying area to a low-lying area. So this point, it is called our source. So this is our source. This is where we get the water, right? And what is here? This is called what we call our mouth, right? So our mouth, it is within where there is what we call oceans, right? There's ocean, or we could say a much more larger rivers, right? Where it will obviously start to join in. Yes, and we do not end there. Because of that the watershed, it is a high-lying area between the two basins. That means there has to be some high-lying area nyana between the two tributaries, right? So these are obviously our tributaries. So between the two tributaries, we must have what we call our interflows. Yes, this is our interflows. Guys, you have to know the definition of all these terminologies. If you do not go on your own, read, oh my brother, you will going to be on some danger. All right, so what did I say? I said this is our very nice source, right? A source, it is whereby the river begins, the high-lying area whereby the river begins, right? And this is our main river joined by the tributaries. This is the area in which the tributaries join the main river, right? So now that we know the area in which the tributaries join the main river, this will definitely tell us the direction in which this river it is flowing. You might, Semnumzane, what do you mean by that? I mean, when you are looking at this, you have to remember our never eat sour worms, right? So where it is joining, it is obviously like this, right? This tributary, it is like this. Meaning this tributary or this river, it is flowing southwest, right? Southwest, because of this is how it is flowing, and this is where it is joining, right? This is the source, meaning this is the mouth. Definitely it is moving southwest. Now we know how to find our direction when looking at our drainage basin. All right, before you say you are a guru of geomorphology, make sure you stay tuned, like this video, subscribe to my channel, because we are still moving to a cross section of a drainage basin. This is obviously a topography view. We have to look at the cross section. Okay, and in order to better understand how the water it is drained on a drainage basin, we have to draw a cross section. Yes, this cross section explains the whole rotation of this water on a drainage basin. So this is our obvious cross section. If you are not drawing, I'm sorry, but then you'll never understand like those ones that are drawing, right? So it is obviously, this is our drainage basin area, right? So what is this? This is obviously our river channel, or we could say our ocean, the end of the river. So this is what we call our mouth. You must remember, this is our mouth, right? So why does it look like it is not even? Because we know that river flows from a high-lying area to a low-lying area. So the river flows from a high-lying area to a low-lying area. Meaning this high-lying area, it is our source, right? It is our source, right? Meaning where there is a source, there has to be something which is influencing the beginning of the river. And what is that something? It is called precipitation, right? So where there's a source, there's precipitation. There's what we call precipitation, right? So there's precipitation onto our drainage basin, right? So what will happen when there's precipitation into our land? So the real question is, how is the water going to be drained when there's precipitation, right? So we all know that there's a process which is called the transpiration, right? The process obviously involves vegetation. This process involves vegetation. The transpiration process involves vegetation. What do I mean by that? I mean, if there's precipitation hitting our very own vegetation, the leaves and the stems on the tree will catch some of the rain, right? It will catch some of the rain. That's why when you come out after there was precipitation, our trees have a little bit of droplets, so they have rain, right? Meaning there will obviously be what? Direct insolation or radiation from the sun hitting the water on our leaf, and there will be some water vapor coming from the trees, right? So that process, it is called the transpiration, right? Whereby this is called the transpiration, whereby the water, it is turned into a water vapor, the water which was caught by the vegetation. All right, not all of that water will obviously be caught by vegetation. Some of the water will obviously be able to reach the land surface, right? As it reaches the land surface, what will happen? There will be some what we call infiltration. The water will enter the earth surface. This is called the infiltration. Right? So when infiltration occurs, the soil which the water is obviously infiltrating, it will get wet. So this area, it is obviously what we call our soil. So there's what we call soil here. Between this point, this is called our soil. Between our land and this area here, it is called our soil. But from this area here to the end, it is called our saturated rocks. Right? These are our saturated rocks. Okay, so we have said that the water will obviously infiltrate the land. This is called the infiltration. Reach the soil layer and obviously create clay soil. And clay soil obviously is associated with evaporation. All right, and we also know that as this obviously water reaches the land, it will not all of it infiltrate the land, but some of it will do what? Will move on top of our land surface, and this will be called a runoff, right? This is called the surface runoff. The water which is moving on top of the earth surface, it is called the surface runoff. And we know that as the water has obviously infiltrated the soil, it will not end there by creating clay soil, but then it will continue and move deeper. So this process coming from the soil into the saturated, it is called the percolation, right? This was the infiltration from the earth surface into the soil, and from the soil into the saturated rocks, it is called the percolation, right? This is called our percolation process. Okay, so now we know that when it reaches our saturated rocks, what are saturated rocks? We must remember that now we are doing the geomorphology, which only involves rivers. You remember grade 11 and 10, we were doing rocks and whatever. Now we are only doing rivers. But then I might remind you, what are saturated rocks? They are rocks that have holes that are broken. They are not one, they are broken. So meaning Guti, they are able to absorb a lot of water. And water can be stored within the rocks because of they are broken and they are not as strong and uniform as igneous rocks, right? So what does this mean? This means now this area will be floating with what we call groundwater. Because of this is where the groundwater ends. This is where the water ends, right? And we must remember that our soil obviously ends here. It ends here. Why does it end here? Because of from here to here, we have what we call the water table. This is what we call the water table. From here to here, is what we call the water table, right? This is our water table. Okay, what is a water table? Before we speak more about water tables and so on, we have to understand the difference between the rivers. Yes, and we know the groundwater will obviously move to the direction of the mouth. Okay, now that we see our structure, guys, this means we obviously now understands the drainage system or the drainage circulation, right? This is how the water it is drained, and also there's obviously going to be evaporation coming from here, clouds, precipitation, and the process continues over and over and over again. Okay, guys, now let's move to different types of rivers. Yes, the different types of rivers that are used to drain an area. All right, so let's wipe this thing. Oh, what do we have to do? Yes, we have to wipe it. Okay, and we remember the structure in which we just spoke about, right? Where there is a saturated rock, right? So where there is a saturated rocks, right at the top where it begins, the layer in which the saturated rocks begin and the layer in which the saturated rocks end, it is called the water table, right? The water table. What is a water table? In a simple form, it means it is the top layer of groundwater. The top layer of groundwater. So this is what we call our wet season, and this is what we call our dry season. All right, so to understand your rivers, you definitely have to compare them with your water table, right? So we first know that we have our what we call permanent river. They call it a perennial river. So our permanent river, it is very deep in length, right? Meaning it cuts through the saturated rock until the end, the dry seasons, until the end. So what do we know about the permanent river or the perennial river? Is that this permanent river, it flows throughout the year. It flows throughout the year. Why does it flow throughout the year? Because we know that it cuts through the wet season and reaches and also cuts through the dry season on the groundwater. Remember, this is what the groundwater. Groundwater where in a saturated rocks. Yes, this is our permanent river. It flows throughout the year because it cuts through the dry season layer on the groundwater, right? So then we also have our second river, which is called the periodic, right? This is the periodic river. It explains itself. It only flows at specific periods, meaning it flows during wet season where there's what? Rain. So where there is rain, you will see the periodic precipitation, right? So this is the periodic. It cuts through the wet layer but not cut through the dry layer, meaning it only flows when there's rain, right? Okay, then lastly we have our last river, which is called the episodic. Oh my brother, the episodic simply means it is obviously not cutting through any groundwaters, meaning the water it is filled up to a point that it doesn't need to cut through the groundwater to receive the water flow. So there's water flow without cutting through the wet season or the dry season, meaning in this area during an episodic river there's a highly of heavy precipitation. So an episodic river, it is associated with heavy precipitation, and we know what heavy precipitation does. Floods, meaning when there's episodic river, floods are highly about to occur because it moves out of the channel of what we call a river. It is obviously outside the groundwater. It is now on top of the earth surface, and we know what will happen when it is on top of the earth surface. Surface runoff will obviously occur, and heavy precipitation will occur. Now we know the different types. This is our permanent, this is our periodic, and this is our episodic, right? This is obviously flows throughout the year. This one flows only on rainy seasons, and this one flows only when there's heavy precipitation. There's nothing you do not understand there. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel. And my guy, we are moving to part 2 of the drainage system, where we'll understand the drainage patterns, the stream orders, and a lot, such as the drainage density and everything. Make sure that you are ready for part 2, because of this one was free marks. Okay. Hey. And remember, there's also the exotic river. How can I forget about that one? The exotic river, it is just mind-blowing. You do not understand what's happening there. What it means, it simply means that this river, it is located on a dry area, right? But then it always flows with water. Where the heck is this water coming from? It is coming from the arid areas, the areas where there is precipitation, vegetation, and a lot of that. So that water coming from that humid areas will flow until it reaches the dry areas. And that main river or river, it is called an exotic river, because of people are shocked. Where is this water actually coming from? Are the gods testing us or what? Okay.